Assalamu alaikum, class, and welcome to this, which is actually the second part of the introduction to the course. In this session, we'll be speaking about some key concepts in critical thinking. Now, one of the main concepts in the field of critical thinking is argument. When critical thinkers use the word argument, they're not necessarily referring to something bad, as some people might think that an argument is a fight. When critical thinkers refer to the word argument, it's in reference to a conclusion or a claim or a position that someone has about a particular issue. Another concept, another word that we should be familiar with is the word conclusion when used by critical thinkers. In this sense, a conclusion is a premise that is supported by reasons. In other words, if there's an argument and you reach a conclusion, this should be supported with reasons. If a person has a conclusion but it is not based on reasons, then this is simply, he has not arrived to a conclusion. He has simply made a statement. Now, critical thinking has been explored by many different theorists and scholars, and they have examined the role of critical thinking in the field of education, and they have come up with some very sound conclusions. One is that critical thinking helps us to think systematically, and it requires the ability to analyze and evaluate. They have also pointed out that critical thinking is a skill worth developing because it prevents people from making bad decisions. When we speak about an argument, there is a need, and it comes from the desire to persuade or to convince people of something. So, arguments develop because we all know that uh, we, on a day-to-day basis, we need to convince or persuade someone of something. We see this in everyday issues. For example, just someone might say, which movie do you want to watch, or what car do you want to buy, or what job should I go after. These are very common situations, and as we said earlier, critical thinking is used in everyday life. Now let's look at different parts of an argument. An argument basically has three parts: an issue, which is the question; a conclusion, which is a claim or a position that the person takes; and then the reasons or premises, which is how to arrive to a conclusion, or in other words, the basis or support for a claim. Let's look at the issue. When we speak about issue, how do we define this? Well, here are two simple ways, which are as follows. A topic, which is a question. Um, the issue here, we're speaking about a topic or a subject, and it's a question about whatever it's a question, and it becomes important when there is a controversial element introduced. We will see some examples in the next slide here. So Here is an example. Um, if someone says to you, smoking should be banned, the question is, should smoking be banned? Now, this could be, this becomes an issue, and if someone decides to discuss it or argue for or against it, then that's a clear example of an issue. Here's another example. Should college students be punished for absence or tardiness? Now, that could be argued either for or against. That is an example of another issue. How do we find issue? Okay, here is a simple way of finding it out by using a statement. Here, the issue is whether smoking should be banned in restaurants. Okay. Example. Here is another one. The issue is whether college students should be punished for absences and tardiness. These are some simple examples, but it's important to understand key issues in order to proceed in the rest of the course. Issues can be about facts, values, or policies. When we speak of an issue that is a fact, it simply describes a situation. An issue that deals with values is an issue that deals with right or wrong. And an issue, when an issue becomes a policy or an issue that are about a policy, it's when it becomes a rule or a law. For example, here are some examples of issues about facts. Is it true? Does the car horn prevent traffic accidents? The issues whether smoking causes lung cancer. These are facts that can be ordered whether this is true or not. Let's look at some issues dealing with values. Again, as we said, these deal with right or wrong. Is there too much here are some examples. Is there too much violence on TV? Are college female students smarter than college male students? Okay, highly debatable. Issues dealing with policies. These issues emerge from discussions of facts and values, and then they can be taken, they require some action to be taken, and it could be stated as a rule. Here are some examples. Computers are the main means of communication in a university. Smoking is banned in public buildings. Here, some action needs to be taken. When we speak about these positions, of course, we are speaking, we're either agreeing or disagreeing with these positions. So then we reach to a conclusion. And to emphasize, we'd like to emphasize this once again by saying that conclusions must be based on supporting evidence. If these are not based on evidence, it's simply a statement. It is not a conclusion as we think about it in terms of critical thinking. Reasons, also known as referred to as premises. What's the premises? Premises, evidence, and these can be supported through justifications. These are just some further examples to illustrate the point we're making. Now, how to locate reasons in an argument? Here, by using the language and using what we call indicators. For example, find a conclusion, then apply the word because. Remember, if we say this should be followed by because, here's an example. The speaker believes that, you state the conclusion. Now, what's the reason? Because so and so and so. Okay? Look for the word other indicators in addition to because might be since, for, evidence by, first, second, third, furthermore, and so on. Evidence, examples of evidence can be statistics, analogies, reports, studies, and expert testimony. There are some barriers to critical thinking, and this is a totally different situation. The examples of barriers to critical thinking can be someone fixating and finding the right answer. There isn't always a right answer in every situation. Sometimes following rules can inhibit our ability to solve problems. If someone is um, overly practical or trying to avoid ambiguity at all costs, and last but not least, thinking that one always has to have the right answer, thinking that being wrong is bad. This is a barrier to critical thinking because sometimes being wrong can be a very valuable learning experience. So, this brings us to the conclusion of our basic key concepts in critical thinking. And here is an assignment to practice to what we just spoke about. Uh, there will be another presentation dealing with this assignment, giving details of this assignment. Thank you very much, and we trust you understood the key concepts in critical thinking. Thank you.